Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because things just got real in Ashburn, Virginia. The pads came on at Washington Commanders training camp this week, and if you thought the off-season drama was intense, wait until you hear what's unfolding in the trenches and in the secondary right now. We're talking sparring partner analogies, a coach comparing his cornerbacks to Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, a former quarterback turned tight end stealing hearts on special teams, and an offensive lineman clawing his way back from a gruesome injury with a whole new mentality. This is the story of a Commanders team desperate to erase the nightmare of 2025 and climb back to the promised land they tasted just one season before. So grab your popcorn, folks, because this training camp update has everything. Competition, comeback stories, new coaches making bold statements, and a defense that is being completely rebuilt from the ground up. Let's set the stage. After a stunning run to the NFC Championship game in 2024, the Washington Commanders came crashing back to earth in 2025. Injuries piled up everywhere. Quarterback Jayden missed significant time, and the defense, oh boy, the defense was an absolute disaster. Washington finished dead last in the league in total defense and gave up more than 26 points a game. That kind of collapse doesn't happen without consequences, and general manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn knew heads had to roll. Out went defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. In came Durante Jones, a defensive mastermind who spent years building one of the league's stingiest units up in Minnesota. Jones grew up right in the DMV, went to elementary and middle school practically across the street from where the stadium now sits, and this is a homecoming story wrapped inside a rebuild. He's bringing a fresh scheme, a new identity, and most importantly, he's bringing accountability to a defense that desperately needs it. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Jones didn't do this alone. Washington also brought in a brand new voice to coach up the cornerbacks specifically, and that man has already made waves in his very first training camp presser. This new cornerbacks coach, a former 11-year NFL veteran himself who knows exactly what it feels like to battle for a roster spot, stood in front of reporters this week and dropped one of the most vivid analogies you'll hear all training camp. He compared his defensive backs going against the receivers in full pads to legendary boxers sparring in the gym. Think about it like this, he said. The best sparring partners in boxing history, guys who trained some of the greatest fighters who ever lived, they know exactly how to push right up to the edge without crossing it. They can hit you and make you feel it, but they know when to pull back. That's exactly what he wants from his corners now that the pads are on. Push it right to the line, never cross it, protect your brothers in the trenches, but don't you dare take it easy either. And just to hammer the point home, he brought up an old photograph of a young Ken Norton's father squaring off with the great Joe Frazier, two men who made each other legendary by pushing each other to the absolute brink in practice. That, folks, is the entire philosophy of this new-look Commanders secondary heading into 2026. Compete like your job depends on it, because in this league, it absolutely does. Now let's talk about the man at the center of the biggest storyline in that secondary, cornerback Trey Amos. If you've been following this team, you know Amos was Washington's big investment at the position. A second-round pick out of Ole Miss who was supposed to take a massive leap in year 2. Instead, disaster struck. Amos suffered a broken fibula in Week 10 last season against, of all teams, the Detroit Lions, and it ended his campaign early. He came into this training camp on the physically unable to perform list, which immediately sent Commanders fans into a bit of a panic. Is he healthy? Is this a setback? Well, according to the coaching staff, take a deep breath, Washington fans, because this is not the disaster it might look like on paper. The team says Amos has been absolutely outstanding in his rehab process, and the reason he wasn't full go in the spring wasn't the fibula at all. It was just some cautious hamstring soreness they didn't want to push. The new cornerbacks coach confirmed this week that Thursday is a massive checkpoint day for Amos and a couple of other banged-up defensive backs. That's when the staff will get their next real assessment and figure out exactly when he can start working back into the mix. And when he does return, don't expect him to just plug into one spot. This coach specifically praised Amos's rare ability to line up both on the ball as press coverage and off the ball in more of a matchup zone role. In this new defensive scheme, that kind of positional flexibility is pure gold because it lets Washington disguise coverages and keep opposing quarterbacks guessing. The plan right now, even while Amos is sidelined, is to have him essentially shadow the drill work from the side so he doesn't fall behind mentally even while his body finishes healing. That's the kind of quiet, behind-the-scenes preparation that could make him a completely different, more dangerous player once he's fully unleashed later this summer. While Amos works his way back, the competition at cornerback is absolutely scorching hot without him. Washington brought in veteran Rasul Douglas in free agency to add experience and stability to a room that desperately needed it after last year's implosion. But here's the thing. This isn't a handout. The new coach made it crystal clear that just because Douglas has the URSM doesn't mean the job is his to lose. There is real, legitimate competition happening for that starting spot, and the staff is loving every second of it. And then there's the pairing that has genuinely got this coaching staff buzzing, Amik Robertson and Mike Sainristil. Both of these guys play with a chip on their shoulder the size of Virginia, and according to the coaching staff, they push each other in the best possible ways. The coach even described watching them sit together, needling each other, both guys practically begging for extra reps against one another because neither wants to give an inch. That kind of fire between two competitors is exactly what turns a mediocre room into an elite one, and Washington is banking on that friction to forge something special by the time the regular season rolls around. Let's shift over to the safety room, because there's a name flying up draft boards of fan attention that deserves way more shine: Jeremy Reeves. For years, Reeves has quietly built a reputation as one of the premier special teams players in the entire league, an ace in the truest sense of the word. But this training camp, something has clearly shifted. The coaching staff revealed that Reeves has taken on a dramatically elevated role on the defensive side of the ball, specifically handling the communication duties for the safeties and linebackers, the guy making checks at the line and helping the whole back end get aligned before the snap. That's not a small responsibility. That's often the job of your smartest, most trusted veteran on the entire defense. With Tommy Donatel now overseeing the defensive backs and safeties room and rotating multiple bodies through different spots, Reeves has become one of the steady hands the coaches lean on constantly. If Washington's defense is going to take the leap this year, it might not just be about star power. It might be about veterans like Reeves quietly holding the entire back end together. Now let's talk running backs for a second, because the coaching staff dropped an interesting nugget about why training camp with pads is so critical for that group specifically. In practice without contact, you can see speed, you can see hands, you can see vision. But you cannot see the one thing that truly separates NFL running backs: can this guy actually break a tackle when a real defender is trying to rip him down? The staff called this year's running back room one of the deepest they've had, with guys spanning the entire spectrum of skill sets, and they're genuinely excited to see how the pecking order shakes out over the coming weeks. This is a group with real intrigue, and now that the pads are finally on, we're about to find out who can actually take a hit and keep churning forward. Let's move to the offensive line, because this might be the single most heartwarming storyline of the entire camp so far: the return of guard Sam Cosmi. If you don't remember, Cosmi suffered a brutal ankle injury in the divisional round of the playoffs after the 2024 season, an injury so severe in the moment that players on both sidelines reportedly started praying as it happened. He fought back all last year, only appearing in a handful of games in 2025 before ultimately being shut down again with a separate injury. Now, for the first time in what feels like forever, Cosmi is entering training camp with a completely clean bill of health and a full offseason of training under his belt. And according to the coaching staff, Something has changed in him that goes way beyond just physical strength. For offensive and defensive linemen coming back from major injuries like a torn ankle, the game isn't really about pure speed. It's about power. It's about trusting your body enough to plant your foot in the ground and absorb a violent collision without hesitation. That hesitation, that split second of doubt, is often what separates a good comeback from a great one. The coaching staff says Cosme simply doesn't think about the injury anymore. He's just playing. And when a guy his size stops overthinking and starts trusting his body again, watch out, because real power tends to follow. If Cosme is truly all the way back, that's a massive boost for an offensive line that is protecting one of the most important assets this franchise has in quarterback Jayden Daniels. There's also a battle brewing at left guard that's worth keeping an eye on. With Cosme working back into the fold, guys like Brandon Coleman have been getting extended run at that competing for that left guard spot, and the coaching staff is using this camp to figure out just how versatile some of these interior linemen can become. There was even a mention of trying to expand certain players into being able to handle multiple interior spots. The same kind of developmental project that turned a guy like Tim McKay into a true jack-of-all-trades up front last season. Depth like that could be the difference between a good offensive line and a truly dominant one heading into a grueling 17-game slate. Now for one of the feel-good stories of this entire camp, tight end Coulson Yanoff. If you don't know his background, buckle up, because it's one of the wildest journeys in the entire NFL. Yanoff was once a highly touted high school quarterback out of Idaho who signed with a major program, bounced around positions in college between quarterback and running back, and somehow, against all odds, found his true NFL home at tight end with Washington as an undrafted free agent. The coaching staff pointed out this week that his background at quarterback has actually helped him grow tremendously in the passing game, giving him an innate understanding of leverage, timing, and space that a lot of traditional tight ends simply don't have. Add in blazing speed that the staff has actively tried to use by lining him up out wide, and you've got a genuinely intriguing weapon developing right in front of our eyes. But make no mistake, his path onto this roster has been built brick by brick on special teams, where his relentless motor has already made him a trusted piece. The coaching staff summed it up perfectly. It's his relentless work ethic that set him apart and gave him a chance. And now he's fully taken advantage of that opportunity. This is the kind of underdog story that makes training camp must-watch television. And let's not forget about the receivers and defensive backs colliding in a totally different way now that the pads are on. The coaching staff specifically called out the growth of Luke McCaffrey, pointing out how much his blocking has developed over the past couple of seasons. In a league where receivers are increasingly expected to be complete players, not just pass catchers, that kind of physical, willing blocking can be the difference between a good offense and a great one, especially in the run game where defensive backs are now allowed to get significantly more physical at the line of scrimmage. This is exactly the kind of detail that separates championship-caliber rosters from pretenders, guys who do the unglamorous work that never shows up on a highlight reel, but absolutely shows up on the scoreboard. So what does all of this add up to as Washington heads deeper into training camp? A defense getting a total facelift under a new coordinator with real NFL pedigree. A cornerback room fueled by fierce internal competition and one very intense boxing analogy. A former special teams ace stepping into a bigger defensive leadership role. An offensive lineman who tore his ankle in the most gut-wrenching fashion imaginable, now looking like his old dominant self again. And a former high school quarterback turned tight end proving that sometimes the most unlikely path leads to the most rewarding destination. This is a team that knows exactly what heartbreak feels like after that 5-12 collapse last season, and every single storyline coming out of this camp suggests a roster that is absolutely determined not to let that happen again. Dan Quinn promised a more competitive training camp this year, And based on everything we're hearing and seeing through these first few days with pads on, he is delivering exactly that. The next checkpoint everyone should be watching closely is Thursday, when the staff gets another crucial evaluation on Trey Amos and a couple of other key players working their way back from injury. That update could shift the entire outlook for the secondary heading into preseason action. All right, that's everything we've got for you on this jam-packed training camp update. This is shaping up to be one of the most fascinating camps this franchise has had in years, with legitimate battles at nearly every position and a coaching staff that is clearly not going to hand anybody anything. If you loved this breakdown, do me a favor and smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. Drop a comment down below and let me know, who do you think wins the battle at cornerback, Rasul Douglas or one of the young guys pushing him? And while you're down there, tell me which storyline has you the most excited for this season? Trey Amos finally healthy, Sam Cosmi looking like his old self, or Coulson Yanoff's incredible underdog journey? Make sure you're subscribed with that notification bell turned on, because we are covering every single practice, every single presser, and every single roster battle all the way through preseason and into the regular season. Thanks for watching. And until next time, go Commanders.